All right. So last week we started looking at the money supply, some factors. Let me just see if I can step back just a little. So a few things about the importance of money in the economy. So the overview. And today I hope to spend a bit more time on the tools for money supply, the tools for changing for monetary policy. Okay. Let me get to a good point. We said that money plays a very important role in the economy. By now, this should be very clear to you. The importance of money in the economy. Money is important to all of us, but in the economy, you need money to drive investment. You need money to drive growth. Okay, and therefore, it's important that it's allocated efficiently. Today, I'll also talk about that. And the caveat here, which I also emphasized in the last class, is that you also need to be careful that you don't increase the money supply so much that it translates into inflation. Okay. And this table, this graph was shown countries that increase the money supply, say close to 30%, had to deal with higher inflation. Okay, so this is just on the money supply side. If the inflation in the economy is driven by changes in money supply, it could be driven by other things, okay, like what we are dealing with now in the economy, where it's driven by the fuel cost or cost of production or conflicts. Okay, but then from the money supply side, changes in money supply can also have impact on inflation. So we'll try and analyze some of these mechanisms. In a high inflation environment, if your central bank increases the amount of money in circulation or even goes in and prints more money, that means that the average money growth rate will increase. So you increase the growth rate in money, the growth rate of money. And so the amount of money in circulation increases, that can lead to inflation. Okay, I'll build up on some of these things as the class progresses. Foreign exchange markets is where we convert our currencies, which I think I ended somewhere on that. I'll make the key distinction between fiscal policy and monetary policy before we delve into the monetary policy side. As we said last week, money appears to be a major influence on inflation. Okay. So some people say print more money, but if you print more money, it can lead to higher inflation. Higher inflation meaning that the cost of goods and services are much higher. Okay, think of the the strikes that are going on. Everybody's asking for higher salaries. If government prints money to pay higher salaries, it can lead to higher inflation. So it's important that you increase the amount of money in circulation such that it drives growth, the economy to grow, but not inflation. And that, I said last week, it's a very tricky thing to do. Okay. Because these economic variables are so important to the health of the economy, we need to understand how monetary policy is and should be conducted. How should it be conducted? We also need to study government fiscal policy because it can be an influential factor in the conduct of monetary policy. The central bank will do its part, but then the government in power also has to do its part in terms of the fiscal policies. How tax revenues are raised, how tax rates are changed, how spending is done. Okay, so that will be the spending, and the government side will come under fiscal policy. Whilst what we are focusing on is the monetary policy component. Okay, so the monetary policy is the management of the money supply and interest rates. How do we manage the money that is in circulation in the country, and how do we influence the rates? And if you influence the rates, that can also influence the money supply. And the first few days, I think the first session, I explained the link between money supply and the interest rates. So monetary policy is the management of money supply and interest rate, and it's conducted by the central bank. Okay. In Ghana, is the Bank of Ghana. Okay. In the US, they will say the Fed. Okay. Fiscal policy deals with government spending and expenditure. So budget deficits is the excess of expenditures over revenue. So under the fiscal policy, if you have a budget deficit and basically you have excess of expenditures, your planned spending is more than your expected revenues. And that is the problem that many developing countries we face, that the revenues we are collecting is lower than the expenditures, the planned expenditures. And therefore, you have to go and borrow if you have huge budget deficits, okay? Or you have to grow the base of the economy. You have to find ways of raising revenues. Okay? And if you don't produce, you cannot raise the revenues. So this is the problem we have. Budget surplus is the excess of revenues over expenditures. Okay. So some countries have a surplus. Okay. They have more money than their planned expenditure. So they can look around the world and say, hey, maybe we should go and help Ghana. Okay. Because they have surplus. The Norwegians, the Germans, they have surpluses. And then they can come and help us solve some of our problems. Okay? But it's not so difficult to see why, because some of these countries are producing all the things that we consume in Ghana or consume in developing countries. They're producing all the Mercedes, the Volkswagens, all, okay? So they tend to get a lot of money, and we are producing the things that we produce. Our revenues are lower than our planned expenditures, whilst these countries have managed to produce high value products, and therefore they tend to have more revenues than the expenditure. It's almost summer in Europe. And if you go to Europe, you see a road has small pothole and they have brought a whole contractor to fix it. Right. And you and I, you know the roads we drive on. Okay. They have a lot of money, so you can afford to fix even small patches. Here, the big, somebody said they are no longer manholes. Our revenues are simply lower than our planned expenditure. The problems are bigger than the revenues we are raising. And so it's not cosmetic. We need to expand the revenue base. Okay. So that is on the fiscal policy side, what government has to do on the fiscal policy side. The central bank's role should be complementary to what the government does, okay, to expand output and also try to drive down inflation. Any deficits can be financed by borrowing or try to get a grant. Okay, functions of the financial markets. We know money is important in the economy, and it therefore makes the financial market very critical in an economy. Some of the key functions of the financial market, of financial markets. Financial markets perform the essential function of channeling funds from economic agents that have surplus to those that have shortages. Okay? So even as an individual in the economy, if I have a surplus, meaning that at my household level, my revenues are higher than my expenditures. Okay, I have more money than my expenditures, then I will have surplus to invest, right? I'll have surplus to save in the economy. And if I save that my surplus, say in I don't know, in some savings account or even put in my bank, the bank can loan that money out to those who have shortages. Some households may, every month in, month out, will need money to even buy the basic food. So they can go to the bank and borrow. Okay. So that will be surpluses from individuals within the economy. Some firms may have surplus that they will put into the financial system, and then it can be channeled to those who need, who have shortages. So the principal lender or savers are households. So the people who are lending out money or putting their monies in the banking sector, in the financial sector, are households, and also businesses. Okay? Businesses so put in their money, and the government, particularly state and local governments, they may have money that they can also put. Foreigners can also come and save in our economy. So they will open an account and bring in foreign direct some transfers into the economy, as well as foreigners and their government. Their governments can also come in and put in money. Okay. So typically, those who have excess funds will tend to be lenders. They will lend out that money. I want you to think of this in a very holistic way. Okay. If you have an economy where people have, even at the individual level, firm level, they all have excess funds. Okay. The individual, hold on a second, my battery is dying. Just a second. If you have an economy where a lot of people, you have excess funds, I have excess funds. Imagine everybody in your class have excess funds. There are over 200 and something people on this call. We all have excess funds. Interest rates in the economy will fall, right? Because we all have excess funds. Okay. And now think of a reverse case where we are all, even at the individual level or the business level, we are all in deficits. We all need money. Interest rates will rise, right? Because I need money to even buy food or rent a place. I have to go to the bank. You also have to go to the bank. Interest rates will rise. So in countries where they have excess funds, interest rates are quite low. Okay? So if before the pandemic and before all this craziness in the world right now, interest rate in the US or in Canada, in Europe was less than 1%. So less than 1%. So people can easily borrow then to invest. I mean, if you live in the US prior to the pandemic or even the high inflation now we're experiencing, an interest rate is 0.8 or 1%. I mean, you can even if you don't have an idea, you have an idea, right? Because you can borrow at 1% and go and invest. People can stay in the university and like the Facebooks and say, I'm done. I get a loan, start a business. If you live in an economy like ours, interest rates are over 25%, hitting 27 or 28%, or even 30 something percent. Even if you have an idea, you'll be you will doubt yourself, right? So these are some of the dynamics in the economy. So people in lower interest rate settings will tend to be very innovative people because you can take risk. It's 1%. If I live in Ghana and it's 20 something percent, 30%, I'll be careful. So innovation, that can hamper innovation. Okay, so the key here or the emphasis here is the excess funds in the economy or the deficits that people have in the economy, and that can affect the ability of the financial system to lend out money. Okay, if you have excess funds, then you can lend out those excess funds easily. If all the people in the economy, or majority of the people in the economy have deficits, interest rates will be very high and people will not be able to borrow easily. So it's a system. You have to think of it in a system way. Okay. So the most important borrowers, those who borrow a lot in the economy, are also businesses and the government. Government is borrowing a lot, like our situation now. Okay, they're borrowing for everything because government has deficits. Okay, and the economy is not growing, or it's not growing to enough. Okay, so the revenues that are coming in are low. Government needs to fix the roads, build the schools, so you have to borrow. So the heavy work is how do we grow the economy? That is the big, that's how. How do we expand the base of the economy so that our revenues will increase? Okay, so the most important borrower spenders are businesses and the government, but households and foreigners can also borrow. And some people, some individuals, they are borrowing to buy cars, furniture, houses. I mean, people are borrowing for a lot of things. Borrowing rates are not, for some of these things, are not so high in the Ghanaian economy because interest rates are high. So if you go and borrow for furniture, you're in trouble. Right? People will sleep on the floor instead. But in a very in the US or North America, people borrow for a lot of things. Interest rates are quite low, and you can pay over your lifetime. Okay, somebody will buy a house for, I don't know, $800,000, paying for 30 years. The interest rates are low, can manage interest rates in Ghana. If you are buying a house for 30 years at that rate, you are in trouble. Okay, so a lot of people will not go for mortgages in our system. Okay, the figure shows the movement of funds through the financial system, and you can have the direct financing, so people can finance companies directly. So I can buy some shares in a company directly, or I can put it through financial intermediaries, banks, and so on. And then they can, so the indirect finance can be an option. So lenders, those who have excess, or those who have savings, can put it through the financial intermediaries and then give that money to borrowers. Okay, so that would be the indirect channel through the financial intermediaries. And then the direct financing through the financial market yourself. You can invest into companies or give a borrower money directly. Okay, so it depends on the options. Some people diversify. Some of the money will go through financial intermediaries, and some they will do direct financing in the economy. So direct finance, borrowers borrow funds directly from lenders in the financial market by selling them securities. Okay, and securities are assets for the person. So the person who buys is an asset, but it's a liability for the individual firm that sells. Okay, all that issues. Financial markets are also essential to promoting economic. Edward Jr., please mute yourself. I cannot be muting people.
I don't know how. No, it's put it. Then taxes on that. Yeah.
Edward Jr., can you mute yourself?
No.
Class rep, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, you have the right also to mute them, and if they are still persistent, you can take them off.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, so I don't know why you'll be in class and you still be involved in other things. This is level 400, and you don't want to be failing any course. So please, it's just 2-3 months, you are done. Just focus, finish your school, go and enjoy your life. Don't make it complex for yourself. Okay, if you throw a course, you have to come back and write. So just, I told the labor icons people last semester, if you didn't make a friend this the whole 4 years, 3 years, this is not the time. Okay, just last semester, try and focus. Financial markets are also essential to promoting economic efficiency. You can see, if you go back to the previous slide, you can see that funds go through the financial system, and these guys in the financial system, they have to allocate the funds to the borrowers. Okay, I will come back to that if that allocation process is done poorly, it can affect the health of these financial intermediaries themselves. If banks are taking money from people to lend out, but they lend the money out to people that don't have the ability to pay back, it will affect the level of NPLs in the banks and can cause these banks to collapse. Okay, so we say that financial markets, they are essential to promoting economic efficiency, and therefore they have to allocate these funds efficiently. Okay, so efficient allocation of capital is critical in the financial market and the system overall. And if you allocate the funds efficiently, think of it in practice. I come to a bank, I need money for a wedding. Okay, another person comes to the bank, needs money to start a business that will export to Europe. Who should be giving the money? Okay. If I get to the bank and I meet one of my old
Not me.
floor mates, who should be giving the money? Echo, you are
Not
here.
me.
Okay. If I get to the bank and I meet one of my old floor mates, who is now the loan officer, and looks at me, so Edward, oh, you are my friend. I know your marriage is important. Your wedding has to be big. So I'm giving you the money instead of giving somebody to start a business. After I've gotten married, what happens? Marriage is not a business. I'm not creating any any product that I'm selling on the market. Yeah, people argue, but yeah. So at the end, I have a loan of over 50,000, 100,000 hanging on my neck, and I'm fighting my house. I can't pay back the loan. So there has to be an efficient allocation of capital. You have to give it to people who can produce and can increase the output in the economy. Okay. You cannot just be allocating the funds in ways that the economy doesn't grow, or the ways that the people who are getting the funds cannot pay back. Okay. So it's important that they promote economic efficiency by producing an efficient allocation of capital. They also directly improve the well-being of consumers by allowing them the time to make better purchases. If I have money and a surplus, I can put in a financial system, and because I don't need the money to buy things now, in the future I can go back to and take the money. So they play a very, very important role in the economy. In essence, financial markets that are operating efficiently improves the economic welfare of everyone in society. And that is why you cannot allow financial markets or the actors to act anyhow in the market. They cannot take people's deposits and run away, because if they do, nobody will bring their monies to them. And if nobody brings their monies to them, and we are all keeping our money in the house, then they cannot give out money that will lead to production in the economy, okay, to higher output in the economy. We all have money, but we are all keeping it at home. The banks will not be able to mobilize enough funds to loan out. Okay, so it's important that the financial system overall it's strong. Okay, the other actors in the market, yes, Obed, quick one. Go ahead, Obed. Yeah.
Sir, please, I wanted to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Sir, please, I wanted to know if borrowing from lenders directly is better than using the financial intermediaries to borrow.
I mean, if you can get somebody to give you the money directly to start a business, Obed, so say you graduate from university and you have a business idea, and some people trust you so much that they can give you their money directly at a lower rate, then you are good. Then you don't have to go for like the 30% interest in the market. The problem is that in many developing countries, people who have these surpluses to loan out are very few. So that is the challenge for the direct financing. And you may not even know them. So if you want to start a business, you start to talk to your friends and your family, and everywhere you go, things are not easy or this nowadays. It means that they are either in deficit that they cannot help you. So then you have to rely on the financial system. But if the rates are also very high, the financial system, interest rates, then you will not even start the business. So that is the problem. If you can get direct financing at a cheaper cost, why not? It's not easy. In the developed countries, they will do all these investments summits. People who have excess money will come trying to find people who have ideas to invest in. And then their economies are booming, like the China and the US and the Europe, because people have surpluses that they want to invest. In our case, people are just trying to survive. Okay, so getting a lot of money from direct financing from your network could be a challenge. All right, structure of the financial market. Debt and equity markets are part of this financial markets primary and secondary markets are also parts. So primary markets, new issues of securities, where issues of securities are sold to initial buyers, where in the secondary market, securities that have been previously issued can be resold. So you have the brokers, the dealers in the secondary markets. Secondary markets can be organized into two ways: the exchange markets, the foreign exchange market, or over-the-counter markets. So the New York Stock Exchange, the Ghana Stock Exchange, all these, or you can have the foreign exchange markets. You can have the money markets, money and capital markets. Money market would deal with the short-term debt instruments, and then the capital market would deal with longer-term debt instruments. In many countries, particularly ours, people like the short term. Okay? They don't want to put in their monies for 20 years, invest in long-term bonds, 20-year bonds. No, they want to do a short-term bond. So money market securities are usually more widely traded. Okay? Short-term, 1 year, 2 years, and that's okay. So they are widely traded than longer-term securities. But there may be exceptions in some countries like Japan, right? Where people prefer long-term. Okay? People are even saving for their great-grandchildren. They buy long-term bonds, 30 years, 20 years. In our sector, certain people are very short-term. They have a short-term horizon in that regard. All right. So before I zoom into the dynamics in the money markets, just highlight some of the basic terminologies when we talk about internationalization of the financial market. The financial market is internationalized. So you can sit in Ghana and trade anywhere, or can transfer money across different countries. So there are a few terminologies that applies that I need to touch on briefly. Okay. Sometimes you hear that the government is selling bonds, and there is a whole debate on radio whether it's a local bond or a foreign bond. Okay. So, and it has implications. So let me just talk about the definitions, and then we'll look at the implication. Foreign bonds are bonds that are sold in a foreign country and denominated in that country's currency. Okay. So Ghana sells a foreign bond in the US market. So we sell it in the US market and denominated in the US currency. That is a foreign bond. Okay. It means that if Ghana government is paying back the bond, it has to pay back in that currency in the US. And it has implications, right? If you sell me a local bond, which is denominated in cedis, in a high inflation environment, I may lose value. So people will not want to buy the local bonds. They will want the government to sell the bond, to denominate the bond in foreign currency, a more stable currency. Okay, so these are some of the things. And there will be a lot of debate. Was it a foreign bond? Was it a local bond? Because if your currency is losing value so rapidly, and you are also selling the foreign bond, that means in the future you're going to pay so much cedis for that equivalence. Okay, so that is but if you sell in local currency and the local economy has high inflation, people will also will not want to buy. Okay. So let me take that again. Foreign bonds are bonds that are sold in a foreign country and denominated in that country's currency. There is a generic word for bonds that are denominated in a currency other than that of the country in which it is sold, in which the generic word is the Eurobond. Okay. Yeah, Ebenezer, quickly.
So please, with the foreign bonds, is it possible that a citizen in Ghana can buy a foreign bond? Let's see, because they know that the citizens wouldn't want a bond that is denominated in the local currency. They do it maybe in the US dollars and they sell it in US. Can a citizen in Ghana purchase or buy those kind of bonds?
Yeah, some people do. Some people do, but then when you get to that point where even your citizens don't trust your currency, you are in trouble. Your currency becomes junk. It's like a junk is useless. So yeah, I mean, if Ghana government is selling foreign bond denominated in the US currency, anybody can buy. Ghanaians in the diaspora will buy, or Ghanaians even here will buy. I mean, if they have a foreign currency account, they just buy. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, if the economy is not doing well or there's some mismanagement, the complications are too much. Okay, people move away, and in economics and finance, you know that perception is everything. The way people perceive the currency, they perceive the currency as worthless. Who wants to keep money forget even bonds, keeping money in cedis on you? People will then move to change their cedis quickly to foreign currencies just to protect themselves. And if you have that, the exchange rate is going to increase rapidly, because demand for the foreign currencies will rise. Okay, so yeah, we don't have room to mismanage the economy. We have to be on point. Otherwise, the whole system, A impacts B, and then B impacts C, and then it's a vicious cycle. Okay, so yeah. All right, let me finish the terminologies quickly. Euro bonds denominated in a currency other than that of the country in which it is sold. So it's denominated in other than you are selling it in a country, but not in that country's currency. In the same terminology, there are generic wording for currencies as well, not just the bond, but the currency. So euro currencies, generically, are foreign currencies deposited in banks outside the home country. So I could deposit foreign currency in a bank outside my home country. Say I deposit cedis outside Ghana, which doesn't make sense, which nobody would do. But in the dollar case, you can have the euro dollar, which is the US dollars deposited in foreign banks outside the US. So the US can put some US dollars in Europe, okay, for transactions in Europe. Okay, so those are the generic, or they will send it to their branches, so bank branches of the US in Europe. Okay, so, or the Europeans will put euro in an American bank. Okay. Yeah, in our the case of our CD, it doesn't make sense to do that, to carry cedis and go and open an account, okay, in another country. Okay, internationalization of the financial market. We also have stock markets where you can buy even stocks from the international stock markets. Okay, so I can sit in Ghana and buy some stocks or invest in some other economies. Cryptos are making it even much easier to do. Okay. All right. Functions of the financial intermediaries. The intermediary is the indirect way of investing. Why would somebody choose? There was a question some minutes ago on the direct financing. Why would somebody choose the indirect way through financial intermediaries and not the direct way? Okay. So, oops. Financial functions of the intermediaries, the indirect finance, it's that the lowest transaction cost is lower, right? So time and money spent in carrying out financial transactions. I give my money to a bank. The bank now collects money from you as well, and also from another person, brings all the money together and then invest. If I'm doing direct financing, that means that I want to invest in, say, Anglo Gold Ashanti. I need to investigate Anglo Gold Ashanti by myself, look at their performance over time, analyze whether it makes sense to invest in it or not. Okay, I need to do this whole analysis as an individual. I don't have to do that if I give that responsibility to an intermediary whose main task is to analyze all the portfolios in the market. So there is lower transaction costs for me. I just deposit them my money, and then they have to do all the checks. Okay. So economies of scale. If they are able to pool a lot of finances or deposits, then they have a lot of money to invest in other big corporations. So the intermediaries, they benefit from economies of scale. Okay, they get a bigger scale to bigger amount of deposits to be able to invest in other big corporations. Liquidity services, then they have a lot of money to even invest in different things. Okay. There's more liquidity because small savers bring their money. Okay. If you're a household, your savings may not be so much for you to invest in Agro-Gold Ashanti by yourself. But if they pool the funds together in a fund, that the fund can invest it, then you still have an investment in Anglo-Gold Ashanti under a fund. So that helps those who have little savings. Okay. Reduces the exposure of investors to risk. If I'm doing one-on-one direct investment, I may be facing a lot of risk. Okay. But if we pool the resources together, then you diversify risk. Okay. Somebody says, if you sit in a trotro and there's an accident, then they said 20 people are injured. But if you're alone, they say, well, then your picture is plastered on the screen. Okay, so some people go with the trotro, diversifying the risk. So reduce the exposure of the investors to risk, because you can put money. It's not, if you're dying with a lot of people, it's not too big a deal, right? But if you're dying alone, that is not fun. So that is that idea that you reduce the exposure of investors to risk by sharing risk. You are investing different items. You are diversifying your portfolio. Okay, that is why people go through the financial intermediaries. Okay, it also deals with, if financial intermediaries helps you to deal with information asymmetry. Okay, if I'm investing by myself doing direct financing, Ebenezer and Co, who were asking a question, if I wanted to invest in Ebenezer's company, I have to deal with a lot of information issues. I need to know what he's going to invest in. I need to trust that when I give him the money, he is going to do exactly what he is going to do. How do I even decide whether he's a good borrower? These are big problems. Okay. These are very, very big problem. Ebenezer's company. Okay. Ebenezer, good to know. Now I know where to invest my money. Okay. So the question is, I need a lot of information, but if I do indirect financing, when the money goes into an intermediary, the intermediary's responsibility is to check this. Okay. Intermediary's responsibility is to check that there is no adverse selection. And adverse selection will be not, you are trying to avoid selecting the risky borrower. Okay. If I do direct financing, I have to do that, which is tough to do. How do I avoid a risky borrower? I need a lot of information, but the intermediary collects information anyways. So they will be able to do that. So before the transaction, there is the problem of adverse selection, where if you're not careful, you select a risky borrower. Okay. The second level problem, information problem. So there are two information problems: adverse selection and moral hazard problem. The second level problem is so you gather enough information about the borrower to be able to avoid this adverse selection. The second level problem is the moral hazard problem, which is after you have given Ebenezer the money, what does he finally do with the money? Is he going to start this multimedia thing that he's talking about, or is he going to use it to, I don't know, to enjoy himself, have parties every weekend? So moral hazard problem, the moral hazard ensures, how do you ensure that borrower will not engage in activities that will prevent him or her from repaying the loan? Okay. It's a moral hazard problem after the transaction. So before the transaction, the information problem you face is an adverse selection problem. But after you have given the borrower the money, the next problem you have is a moral hazard problem, which means that the moral hazard problem, you have to monitor the person to be sure that they are using the money in the right way. So you open a bank, you're operating a bank, you give people loans to start businesses, and you do not monitor. You are going to have a lot of bad debts because some of them will indulge in moral hazard. Okay, they will use the money for things that they didn't indicate that they were going to use the money for. Okay, so you cannot just give out the loans and cross your leg and wait for your interest. They will run away. Okay. In Ghana, it's not difficult. You just go to your hometown and you are off grid. so you have to be careful. Okay. And the way we deal with money, like you loan out somebody money and the person hasn't paid, and you try to get your money back, but that's more money. So you don't want me to have peace of mind. Okay, so you need to really, really be careful when you are dealing with this money. Okay. Adverse selection, when they want the money, they sing a different song, and when you give them the money, they will sing another song. Okay, so you have to be very careful. Those who end up in banks, okay, those which a lot of people, number of you be, and if you are in a very important position, please keep an eye on these two information problems. Okay, sign a contract with restrictive covenants. Okay, so you always sign a contract that in the case of default, in the case that you use the money for this, these are the penalties, legal, binding contracts. Okay, it's very important. So in conclusion, financial intermediaries allow small savers and borrowers to benefit from the existence of financial market. If we didn't have intermediaries, okay, some of us with small savings will not be able to invest because it will be too small money to invest in a big corporation directly. But small savings, your small savings, my small savings comes together, and then we can put it into the financial sector, and then they can be given out as loans. My small savings together with yours, economies of scale, the bank can loan out the money, the firm that takes the money can start a business, produce, export, government gets tax revenue, creates jobs, and then the economy grows. Okay, but if they collect the money and then they don't produce, then we are all in trouble. Can you explain economics of scale? Economics of scale is expanding scale. If you are able to bring small savers together, you have more scale. We say it's economics of scale. You are able to expand your reach. Okay, so you can then. It's better if 100 people are contributing to a fund, and then you have more savings or more deposits that you can use than fewer people, which will give you a small scale. Okay, some tables show some of the assets that we have. Regulation of the financial system. As I've been saying, the financial system cannot be allowed just to be there, right? You need to regulate, okay? To increase the information available to investors, you need to regulate and you need to publish all this information so that I know firms that I shouldn't invest in. Okay, you have been in Ghana before, for the past 10 years, you've heard about the issues that we have in the financial system, and therefore regulation is key. The central bank has a regulatory arm that is supposed to supervise all these actors in the financial system. Okay, so increase information available to investors. I should know where to put my money. That helps me to reduce adverse selection and moral hazard. If somebody comes to me to ask for a loan, I should be able to go to some credit registry to check the credit worthiness of the person. Okay. So ours is now being strengthened. In other places of the world, if they enter your name, they know your credit history. So people are able to reduce the adverse selection and moral hazard problems. Okay. Reduce insider trading. So you need to regulate so that there's no insider trading, especially on the stock market. People don't feed people with more information than others to get advantage in the market. Regulation is important. So the first point is to increase the information available to investors. The second one is to ensure the soundness of financial intermediary. You need strong regulations to ensure the soundness of intermediaries. If intermediaries fail in the economy, nobody will put their monies in them. Keep that in mind. And if we are all not putting our monies in these intermediaries, they will not have enough funds to borrow out. And if they don't have enough funds to borrow out, the economy cannot grow. Okay. So we need to ensure the soundness of financial intermediaries. Restrictions on entry. I should not be able to just get up today and open a bank tomorrow. It should not be the case. Okay. There has to be steps, rules, things that I need to abide by or follow to be able to even open that branch. Okay. I need to disclose all information. If I'm going into some risky investment with people's money, I need to be able to disclose. Okay. So there has to be some restrictions on certain assets and activities. Certain percentage of the money that you collect should not go into these classes of assets. So there should be classes of assets that are considered risky assets. Okay. Deposit insurance, avoid bank runs. So there should be systems, regulations that in the case that a bank collapses, people who have their monies there have can get some percentage back. Okay. So there should be some deposit insurance where if the bank closes, I should still get my money. Okay. If they don't have that, then I'll lose. Okay. So you need to ensure the soundness of these financial systems by putting in strong regulations. Okay. Limit on competition. Competition can drive people. People can make bad decisions because of competition. Banks are competing for customers. If you don't check it, banks will be luring people to come for loans at lower interest rates, but they know that that rate is not even adequate to cover their costs. Okay. Like the recession that took place in the US some time ago, people who didn't have enough good jobs were even given loans to buy houses, and they could not pay the rents, the mortgages, okay, because of competition. Okay. So you need to limit competition so that it doesn't weaken the financial system. Like the insurance companies, the same thing. You need regulations there, because if you are not careful, then there will be price undercutting. They will be cutting down the prices just to win more customers. But at the end, then it affects the whole system. Yes, there was a hand. I can't see you again. Yes, Richard.
Okay, thank you, sir. Please, I want you to restriction on assets and activities.
Yes,
So,
yes, go ahead.
what are you talking about? Are you talking about the real assets or the loans?
I don't know where you are. So all assets, the financial assets. So we will say that investing in a treasury bill is a safer asset, right? So there has to be regulation on what percentage of your assets, of the funds that you have, you should invest in certain places. Okay, it can be how much should you invest in pension funds? How much should you invest in government bonds? How much should you invest in private businesses, in say hotels, or what percentage? Banks are investing in all manner of assets. So which ones are risky? You should be able to, some banks, some financial institutions, they had the risk, they had the interest, so they will want to game the system because the money they are collecting is not their own money. So if you are not careful, they will invest in risky assets that have the potential of higher interest. But if they lose the money, it's you who is losing. Okay, so I mean, these financial assets is what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, branching. you cannot have cases where a small bank starts today and tomorrow they want 1,000 branches in Ghana. They may fail, you see, because then the operating cost can be very high for the branch. Like if you put a branch in my hometown, how many people are saving there? So you need regulations on them to be able to check how they start a bank today and tomorrow they have 300 branches all over, but they are struggling to even collect deposits or even invest that money they are collecting very well. So we need strong regulations on them. Okay. Restrictions on interest rates, as I said, they cannot say the interest rate in the economy now is 23%. Okay, looking at all the variables in the economy, inflation and all that in the economy. And let's say inflation is even at 15%. Okay. And then there's a bank you hear that a bank in Ghana, you can get a loan for 2%. There should be questions. There are question marks then. The interest that they are charging, which is 2%, cannot even cover the inflation in the economy. So you need regulations to check that. Okay, you need strong regulations to check that people don't hide and do something that will destroy the whole financial system. And perceptions can be contagious, right? So if I put my money in bank A and they mismanage the funds and there's a problem with my money, even if there's bank C that is doing well, I'll be very skeptical about putting money there. Okay, so you need to make sure that the whole financial system is properly regulated. Okay. Central banking and the conduct of monetary policy. Okay. I'll first give a quick background to the central bank as we have it in Ghana, and then go into the money supply dynamics. Origin of the central bank. So the principal objective of the central bank, as enshrined in the 1957 ordinance, which set up the central bank, is that they were to issue and redeem banknotes and coins, okay, to keep and use reserves, so bank reserves, and to influence the credit situation. So they should, their position in such a way that they can influence the credit situation. Periods where people need loans, they should be able to put policies for people to get easy access to funds. Okay? And that is all done in a view to maintaining monetary stability. Okay? In Ghana, and the external value of the Ghana pound. At the time, we had the Ghana pound. Okay. So bad news is that we have the Ghana cedi now. Okay, and then the last bit is, as an important role of the central bank, is to act as the banker and financial advisor to the government. Okay, so they act. That's why people will say, okay, then they have some responsibility if the economy is not doing so well. Okay. But you need to understand their role and where they can impact. Okay. These are a bunch of functions, formulate of the central bank, formulate and implement monetary policy aimed at achieving the objective of the bank, promote by monetary stability of the value of the currency. So they have to manage reserves so that the country's currency is stable. The central bank is supposed to institute measures which are likely to have a favorable effect on the balance of payments, the state of public finance, and the general development of the economy. So the central bank's role is not just managing the money, but managing the money such that the economy will grow, the economy will develop. Okay. So they also have an allocative role there. And then importantly, regulate, supervise. They are supposed to do the regulations, but also the supervision. So bank supervision units. Okay. And direct the banking and credit system and ensure the smooth operation of the sector. You can take your time and go through, read also on their websites. You can see some of these things there. When it comes to licenses of financial institutions, they are responsible. They act as banker and advisor to government, promote and maintain international relations. So between central banks, they do that. Do all things that are incidental or conducive to the efficient performance of its function under the Act. So under the Act, that's what they're supposed to do. Okay. So they have a big responsibility to make sure that there is enough credits in the system, to make sure that the economy grows, to make sure that inflation is under control through what they can do, that part that they have control over. Okay, money supply. So now that we understand that the central bank plays a key role in the supply of funds in the economy, let's look at the factors and the tools that the central bank has available. As I said before, we said that money supply also refers to the monetary aggregate, if you remember, and the M1. So for the purposes of this class, we are using the M1. The supply of money in an economy is determined by the banking system. The banking system determines the supply of money. Okay. Directly controlled by the central bank through monetary policy. The central bank directly controls the supply of money through the conduct of monetary policy. However, you and I know that they cannot do this in isolation without commercial banks. So indirectly, it's influenced by commercial banks and the public. Through this process, we call the deposit creation process. You create money from money, right? If I deposit 100 Ghana cedis, the bank can loan out some amount, say 80% or 90% of my money. The person who gets the money can create more money from that money. Okay, so directly, the money supply is controlled by the central bank. Indirectly, through the deposit creation process by commercial banks and also the public. But the public has to put money into the financial system. The central bank controls the supply of money through what we are referring to as the conduct of monetary policy. They conduct monetary policy to control money supply. Let me use the whiteboard. So let's say money supply, MS, okay, is 100 million. Let me just say 100 million. The central bank has to conduct monetary policy to either increase the money supply or to reduce the money supply. Okay. To change the money supply. And whether the money supply increases or decreases depends on the direction of the economy, where we want things to go. So if you increase the money supply, as I said in the first class, then you want interest rate to fall, you want higher investments. Okay, so that is the rule. So changes, keep that in mind. We will be building up on this. The central bank controls the supply of money through the conduct of monetary policy. Central banks are therefore responsible for conduct of monetary policy in some countries, which you guys can tell me. I'll leave it as an open question. In some countries, the central bank is independent of the central government in the conduct of monetary policy. My question to you guys, you are in level 400. What do you guys think? Do you think that our central bank is independent of our central government in the conduct of monetary policy? Anybody? You should have an opinion. Anybody? You can just raise your hand. I'll call you. Do you think we are saying that in some countries, the central bank is independent of the central government in conduct? Do you guys think? Or let me rephrase it. Do you think that central banks should be independent of the central government in the conduct of monetary policy? Should be. Can answer either the first or the second. Ebenezer.
Yeah, Doc. So I think I prefer the first one, that whether the government is the central bank is independent of the government. In my opinion, I think there is it's not true, because not always true, because during the banking crisis, when the banks collapsed and the deposits of many people was locked up and the banks couldn't pay, I think the government had to print out money. In fact, there was politics around that the NPP government, before the election, the NDC government said they would pay the depositors when they come to power. So what the NPP government did was that, okay, they said we will pay it right now. So they had to pay all those who were whose money had locked up. And in fact, I was part of those people. So I had my money back, and it means that they had to print more money to pay these people. So it's one way or the other, they prevented maybe the central bank from acting independently.
Okay, but you got your money back. You are lucky. I'm happy for you. But I mean, even with that experience, you'll be careful where to put your money, right? So
Exactly.
these are the issues that we have. If you don't regulate the system very well, and there are issues, how you find the money to solve this could even create more problems in the economy. If you are printing money, it could lead to even higher, much higher inflation in the economy. So yeah, this is a problem. Okay. Anybody? I'm sure you guys are following the news. We are in a monetary sector now, period now, where there are a lot of monetary policy changes. Yeah, Brobe.
So I think whether the central bank should be dependent or independent from the central government is dependent on it, maybe the country's laws or something, because you've seen developed countries such as the United States where the central bank is independent from the central government, and we've seen the effect they have on their economy. And Ghana to have a situation whereby our central bank is not independent. So I think whether the central bank should be independent or should be dependent or independent from the central government is dependent on maybe, though both of them are having the advantages and the disadvantages.
Okay, so I hope you guys think through all the advantages. In the US case, they can even select the guy from the university, the head. Okay, and in our case, yeah, let me take the graph and then summarize this point. The graph, Mami, the graph first.
Okay, sir. I think the central bank should be independent from the central government, because this political interference is too much. Because when such things occur like this, they tend to make policies that tend to favor the government, and this increase the money supply in the system. It's like, it is my government and these are my people, so you have to do things to favor the government. So any policy they take is more or less like to do something that people will see that the government is working and it is favoring them. So I think it should be independent, so that when it sets their policy, the monetary policy, it's set in such a way to control inflation. So I think it should be independent.
So whatever position you take, you should be able to articulate the advantages and the disadvantages. Okay, Mami, I want to hear from a lady.
Yes, sir, please, as the graph said, when the central bank is independent from the central government, it helps the central bank to implement its policy independently without being or getting approval from the central bank and central government, because as he said, it will kind of be like the central government, because they want to do this and the central bank also wants to do this. It will bring, let's say, conflict between the two. So if they become independent from the central government, it will help them implement their policies, which will be in the favor of the citizens and the country as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm happy that you people can articulate and you understand the issues. try and follow what is going on, and they may have impact on all of us. Okay. All right, so there are pros and cons to it. If the central bank they are doing their job and they are all technocrats, then really it doesn't matter who is there, right? But in the dispensation we have, this government wins power, it brings its own people to head the bank. This person wins, they know that this person have to go, all these changes, because some of them are afraid that the direction that they want to take the economy, if they don't have their own people there, they will not be able to do that. But even if you don't belong to the party, you should be able to give advice, technical advice, okay, to them. All right, so you should be able to articulate, and I'm happy that you are able to articulate some of the key points. Recall that monetary policy refers to changes in a country's stock of money supply that seeks to stabilize the level of economic activities and prices. So that should be key. In most advanced countries, when we say that prices are stable, we mean that inflation is around very close to 2%. Okay. So 1-2% inflation, then we have stable prices. In our settings where we are now dealing with flirting with 25 to 27% inflation, now we are in double digits right now. Okay. So in most advanced countries, stable prices means inflation very close to 2% and output as close as possible to full employment level of output. Okay. Let me use notation, okay, for full employment. So if you have output, usually output will use Y as output. If you have full employment, say we put a bar, so this is the maximum output we have. Okay. The maximum the economy can produce, let's say 100 bags of a product. This is the maximum. Sometimes countries have an ability to produce this 100 bags, but they will be producing, say, 30 bags, okay, if they are inefficient. They will be producing 30 bags. So they will be producing 30 bags if they are inefficient. So that means that the Y that they have is not at full employment. Because if you employ all your resources very well, you are producing 30 bags, but you have workers, people who don't have jobs. If you employ them, you'll be able to produce more of these bags to approach full employment. A lot of developed countries are approaching full employment. Okay, very efficient. They're able to produce a lot of goods and services. And if you produce more, okay, even from our basic micro and macro, if you produce more, if Y output, if supply increases, prices will fall. Okay. So as long as you are producing below capacity, okay, like you are producing rice, but you are not able to produce a lot, the price of rice will be high. But if you produce a lot of rice, prices will fall. Okay. So in the full output economies, you find that inflation is very low. Okay. They have everything. They're producing everything. So they are putting full employment level of output. Price levels are close to 2%. And countries that are producing below their capacity, prices are high. Prices are high. So how do we manage the money supply in such that we can produce close to our optimum and at the same time make sure that prices fall or the price level is not so high? Okay. All right. We will take the money supply, whose mic is on now. Try as much as possible to follow the next sessions that we're dealing with for the next, I don't know, 40 minutes or 30 minutes. We will say that the supply of money, we will take the supply of money as a policy variable. Yeah. It's a policy variable, which means that, let me see before I draw it. That is, the supply of money is the level determined by the central bank. Okay. In a typical demand and supply analysis setting, let me clean the board. So the typical demand and supply analysis setting, you will say that supply is upward sloping. Okay. You will say supply is upward sloping. Some people wanted to forget supply completely. Supply curves. Okay, let me see if I can draw it. Okay, so we will say this is be a supply curve, and this will be, a, oh, what is happening? This will be a demand curve. Demand is downward sloping. You should remember that. So demand is downward sloping, and supply is upward sloping. Okay, this is what we know, and that determines prices. Okay. Equilibrium price, PE, and then you have equilibrium quantity. Okay, equilibrium quantity, QS, or equilibrium quantity is a QE, something like this. However, in the money supply setting, the change that we will make to this equation is that supply is a policy variable and is determined by the central bank, meaning that the supply curve for money is vertical. Okay. I hope you follow this. The supply curve is vertical. The demand curve, demand for money is just like the normal demand, so it's downward sloping. So money demand is downward sloping, but money supply is vertical. Okay. And demand for money and supply of money will give you the equilibrium price, but the equilibrium price here is the interest rates. Okay. So, and we are saying that this amount here, which is a policy variable, is determined by the central bank. So the central bank can say that I want to increase the money supply, or I want the money supply in the economy to be 100 million. Okay. Now the central bank can say, okay, I want a policy that will increase the interest rate in the economy from, say, 10%. So let's say R here is 10%. Central bank can decrease the money supply, which will be a shift of this vertical line to the left, or increase the money supply. This is what we are referring to as the changes in the money supply. So the changes in the money supply will be an increase. I think I wrote it somewhere here, where the MS will increase or decrease. Okay. So if MS decreases, that means that you shift the money supply curve to the left. What will be the effect if you decrease money supply? Let's say you decrease money supply from 100 million in the economy to 50 million, using whatever policy. We'll go into the policies in a jiffy. Okay, so this will be MS2. So let's say MS2, and this is MS1. Here is a shift of the money supply curve to the left. The resulting effect will be an increase in interest rate. The interest rate was 10% at this point. If you reduce the amount of money that is in circulation in the economy, interest rate will rise. Okay. You don't have to memorize this. You just think conceptually. There's less money in circulation. Therefore, if people want a loan, it will be difficult to get a loan. Those who have the money to loan you will be asking for higher interest rates, and therefore interest rates will rise. So let's say to 20% if you decrease the money supply. If the central bank does an opposite policy by expanding money supply, okay, we will say the expansionary monetary policy, the expanding money supply, then you increase the MS money supply. It's a policy variable, is determined by the central bank through the conduct of monetary policy. Okay. So then MS2, MS3 here is an increase in the money supply. So let's say the decrease was to 50 million. and now the increase is to say 200 million. I mean, you're pumping about, now the money supply is about 200 million. The effect will be what? Now there's more money in the economy, which will push interest rates down. Okay. So now the interest rate in the economy will even reduce further from 10%. So let's say 5%. Okay, 5%. So the central bank will conduct monetary policy. If the central bank wants to achieve a 5% interest rate, given a fixed money demand curve, what should be the money supply in the economy? That's the central bank's target. So the central bank will target a certain interest rate that they want to achieve in the economy and conduct monetary policy to achieve that. So let's say I want 8%, or I'm targeting that interest rate in the economy will be 8%. So 8%, then the question is, how should money supply change to meet this 8%? I'll map this 8% back to the money demand curve. Okay. And then you see that the money supply should be maybe 150,000 to achieve an 8%. Okay. The key is that this vertical line is based on the central bank's decision. Okay. Central bank can increase the money supply, as you have seen, I'm repeating this, or decrease the money supply to achieve a certain target interest rate in the market. Okay. We'll be using this framework for a lot of analysis in the class. So if you didn't get it, you take the audios and go over, and then we will be visiting that. Yes, the graphs. Yeah, there's too much feedback. Felix, mute yourself.
Okay, sir. I wanted to ask if the money demand curve and the money supply curve, can there be a scenario where both of them will change simultaneously?
Yes, it's possible. The graph, we are going ahead, but yes, it's possible. I don't want to mess up the analysis. If I mess up the analysis, you see that will even be, depending on where the shift factors are going. Okay. I don't want to touch the graph, but think visually. We are economists. Think. Let's say the government reduces money supply. Okay. Government reduces money supply. There's less money in circulation. The first effect will be what? The graph, are you here? Let me work with somebody.
Yes, please, I'm here.
What will be the first effect? Government reduces money supply. What will be the effect on interest rates?
It will increase.
Interest rate will increase. Let's say that the people in the economy now are also demanding more money. What will happen?
I think the interest rates will increase further.
Exactly. You are in trouble. So you are in trouble in an economy when money supply is reducing and you don't have a lot of money in circulation. People are asking for more money. Then your interest rates will be hitting 50%. Okay. If you reduce money supply and people don't want a lot of money for transactions and anything, then the money interest rate will not increase as much. We'll go into the dynamics. Okay. We'll go into what happens if the central bank expands money supply, and which will push interest rates down. And the demand curve also shifts upward. Okay. Then interest rates will increase slightly above what you were expecting. Okay. So these are the dynamics. It's good that you are thinking through these changes. So the demand curve and the supply curve change simultaneously, and that will affect the equilibrium interest rates that you have in the market. So it depends on the assumptions we make on the demand curve. If we assume that money demand is constant, which we assume in this case, yes, then these are the direct effects. But if we are assuming that at the same time supply is decreasing, money supply is decreasing, money demand is increasing, then we will move into like the Zimbabwean case of some years ago, where the people can't find money in the economy, but the demand for goods and services was really rising. That could create a problem. let me formally go through what would drive money supply, and then we'll talk about what would drive money demand as well. Okay, so we will take the supply of money as a policy variable. So I've explained what we mean by policy variable, meaning that the money supply is the level determined by the central bank. And in terms of graphics, it's vertical. The money supply curve is vertical. All right, the tools, I have already hinted on some of the changes in the economy, but let me touch on in detail the tools. Tools of monetary policy. Central banks usually have an array of instruments for the conduct of monetary policy. These are the three main tools. These are the three main tools for the conduct of monetary policy. Open market operations, reserve requirement policy, discount rate policies. Okay, so three broad tools. Changes in these tools will change the money supply. And now remember, the change in the money supply is a leftward shift of the money supply curve or the rightward shift of the money supply curve. Okay. Felix, you keep unmuting yourself. Okay. What's Junior something? I will touch on the labor market issues later. This is a monetary theory class, but there are some labor market dynamics. Touch on it. Okay. All right, so these are the tools. It's good that people are following and also following the news. And now you are thinking through the implications. Okay. The labor market, the only thing you should keep in mind that if you double everybody's salary in this country, it doesn't mean that our well-being will increase. Okay, that you should keep in mind. Because if you double everybody's salary here in Ghana, demand for the goods will also increase and prices will increase. We will be back to square one. Okay, so it depends on how you make these adjustments. Otherwise, the welfare will not necessarily improve. Okay. We'll come back to that. Okay, so these are the tools. Open market operations. What is open market operation, OMO? Open market operations refers to the purchase or sale of government securities in the open market. Okay. So government sells treasury bills. So government can sell treasury bills. If government sells government bonds or T-bills or anything, say the open market here refers to dealers in government bonds and individual government securities. Okay. Like government bonds and treasury bills. Okay. If say government is selling T-bills and then I go and buy T-bill, maybe I have some money in my current account and I use that to buy treasury bills. In terms of the money supply in the economy will fall. Remember the M1 monetary aggregates consisted of currency plus all these accounts, checkable deposits. So if government sells treasury bills and a lot of people rush in the economy to give their money to government, the money supply will fall. That will mean that, if you go back to the whiteboard, that will mean that the money supply will shift to the left. Okay. Government sells T-bills, we all give our money back to government, the M1 will fall. Okay. So if government is selling treasury bills, it's not surprising to note that the interest rate in the economy rises. Okay. Because the government is crowding out other people from the financial market. So we are all going to government selling treasury bills at 18%, 20%. Even if a private firm is giving me 22%, I will give my money to government at 20%. So the money supply will shrink. Okay, contractionary. We say the economy supply will contract. Okay. Okay, so what we have, open market sales, we are focusing on the sales. And open market sales, the selling of government bonds and government securities, open market sales will reduce the money supply. I'm taking that again. Open market sales, the one in the bracket, which is a sale, will reduce money supply. Open market purchase, however, will increase money supply. So if you do open market purchase, which will be literally like pumping in money to the economy, that will increase money supply. But open market sales will reduce money supply. And if money supply reduces, there are consequences for interest rates. Yeah. What's the name? Emmanuel, you have a question? Your hand is up. If you don't have a question, you can't put it down. Okay, let's see how the open market works. Let's see how open market affects the money supply. Consider an open market purchase. So I'm doing the effect for the open market purchase. Consider an open market purchase of government securities worth 100 million. So government is doing an open market purchase. You should know that an open market purchase is meant to increase money supply, whilst an open market sales reduces the money supply. To see how OMO affect the money supply, consider open market purchase of government securities worth 100 million. The central bank will issue the initial check. Let's say the central bank issues initial check worth 100 million, which can be drawn as cash or deposited into an account with a commercial bank. So central bank wants to increase the money supply by 100 million, okay, open market sale, purchase. So issue the check either to the banks or to individual or whatever. But the idea is to expand the money supply. Note that either of these actions will increase the money supply. So the central bank issues a check, or the central bank gives money to banks to loan out, like we did during the COVID pandemic. So banks can loan out to small businesses for small business at a lower rate for small businesses to operate. That will be an open market purchase. Okay, you're pumping in money of about 100 million. Note that either of these actions will increase the money supply. If the check is deposited in an account, the commercial banks can create additional loans out of it. Okay. Even if the money is given to me and I put in my account, the bank can give out more money from that money, and that can increase the money supply. Okay. An open market sale will have the opposite effect on the money supply. Open market sale will reduce money supply. However, open market purchase will expand money supply. Okay. Government can do OMO to expand money supply or sell government securities to reduce money supply. Any question?
Okay. Yeah, hello, sir.
Emmanuel, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, please. I was going to ask a question about sometimes we mention interest rate, but I know interest rate is like a generic term. We have the interest rate on loans and then the interest rate on investments. So when we are talking about interest rates, is it referring to the two, or probably is related to the one of the two?
So when the government implements policies to change rates, okay, maybe you change the policy rate can change. So and that will impact, say, the other rates in the market. If the rates, I'll go into that later, I think next week. If the government changes even the rate at which the central bank changes the rate at which they will borrow or give money to commercial banks, that act alone can impact all other rates in the market. Okay. So let's say commercial banks can go to the lender of last resort, which is the central bank, for a loan. If initially that loan interest was 20%, and the central bank says that, oh, now you can come for it at 10%, that will impact all these interest rates we are talking about in the market. It will impact the lending rate, it will impact the returns on any rate, all the rates in the market will be impacted by that. So the central bank will target a certain rate, maybe the rates, either the interbank rate will be impacted, if I'm borrowing from the central bank at 10%, then I will not come and borrow from another bank at 20% or other percent, because I can get it at a cheaper rate somewhere. So I'm not going to be specific on one rate. All rates will be impacted in the economy when the policy trickles down. Okay. Even the rate on mortgages will change when the central bank policies are put in place. It will trickle down to the rates. If you are getting new loans, it will be impacted. If you are refinancing a house, it will be impacted. You will get new rates. It trickles down. It's supposed to trickle down, okay, to impact all rates in the market. We'll be more specific when we are dealing with the effect on interbank rates. And once interbank rates are impacted, lending rates will be impacted, all other rates in the market will be impacted. So we are using interest rates generally in the economy or fall or rise. Yes, I saw a hand. Steve, try and use your full name so I can get to know you guys.
Okay. So I wanted to know of this. The government bill. Is it sold out to the entire public or is sold out to the commercial bank?
Government what?
The government bills.
Government,
the security they're about.
yeah, government sells treasury bills or government bonds, and everybody can buy. Everybody can buy. So my money, banks, yeah, everybody can buy in the economy. I mean, you have money sitting in your savings account. You can even go and withdraw and go and buy government treasury bills. If the treasury bill is giving you a higher rate than what you are getting on that savings. So we can all buy. Just then government is owing us money. Okay, so it's not only commercial banks that have to invest. They also invest. Pension funds companies will also buy. Everybody, is buying. Sometimes they will say that the bond is oversubscribed. Okay, and then you are looking at your friend's face and say, okay, who are those buying? Corporations can buy. Okay, individuals can also buy. The 91-day T-bills and 180. Okay, let me try to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes. In Ghana, the Bank of Ghana Monetary Policy Committee announces the direction of monetary policy after every month meeting. Okay, and the direction will be, what do we do this month? Do we put in policies to increase the money supply to reduce rates in the market, interest rates? Or do we reduce money supply to increase rates? So every month, looking at the macroeconomic settings, then they will announce the direction. So they will say that, okay, the policy rate has been reduced. Okay, we'll go into some of the dynamics. In general, the policy is announced as a target policy interest rate. So the government has a target rate in the market. And as I said, if that target rate falls, it signals that the interest rates in the market, we are expecting the interest rates in the markets to fall, all these rates that we have to fall. And if the target policy rate increases, then it's likely that other interest rates in the market will rise. Okay? It's a target. It's like the whiteboard, what we did. So the government will say, okay, I'm targeting an interbank rate or any rate that is 15% in the economy. Okay, that is my target. Now I need to conduct monetary policy to achieve that target. So if I map it to the demand curve, then my target, the money supply should be a certain amount to achieve this target rate. It can be the interbank rates, it can be the final lending rates that are in the market. Once interbank rate is impacted, the other lending rates will follow. Okay. If I'm borrowing money from if a bank is borrowing money from another bank at 15%, then they will not come and sell the funds at 15%. They will sell it above 15, so within a certain range. So once we impact even the interbank rates, all the other rates will be impacted. Now we have a formula that will trigger the range that within which the rate will fall. So in Ghana, the interbank rates, in the US, so if you're reading the textbooks and you see the federal funds rate, we are treating that as the interbank rates that we have in Ghana. Open market activities are therefore carried out to meet the target policy rates that we have, whatever the target is. Advantage of open market operations: if you do open market sales and open market purchase, the advantage is that the central bank has complete control over the volume. Central bank knows how much they should expand and how much they should contract. Okay, so it's very flexible and precise. You know that you are shifting the money supply so much to the left. The central bank has control over the open market operations. So much. You are reducing the money supply so much, or you are expanding it so much. So these are the terms. All right. You can easily reverse it. So if you increase it, you can decrease it, you can increase, decrease, so that you can control the rate at any point in time. So if you are using advantage of the open market, quickly implement it. Okay. Month on month, the direction is set, you increase money supply, reduce money supply to target this rates. Discount rate. The commercial banks can borrow from the central bank when they are short of reserves. Okay, so we say the lender of last resort, the discount rate. The interest rate charged on commercial banks borrowing from the central bank is the discount rate. So if the central bank says, okay, if you want a loan from me as a bank, I will charge you 20%, 30%. Okay, the interest rate charged on commercial banks borrowing from central bank is the discount rate. So in the notes, we are denoting that by ID, okay, the discount rate. Central banks will raise the discount rate to signal tightening of the monetary policy. So if central banks raise the discount rate, say the discount rate was 20%. So if you want to borrow from the central bank as a commercial bank, you get it at 20%. If the central bank decides to raise it to 30%, it means that they are signaling that they are tightening monetary policy, meaning that they are trying to reduce money supply. So you raise the rate to discourage commercial banks to borrow. If the central bank does the opposite and lower the discount rate, meaning that the central bank says, instead of 20%, now you can come for money from the central bank at 5%, then you are losing monetary policy. You are expanding money supply. So the policies that you put in place can either expand money supply. Go back. You will expand money supply, which is to the right. Expansionary, increase money supply, or contractionary, reduce money supply, or tightening money supply, the tightening monetary policy. Okay. So they will either you use the OMO to do the expansion, or you can use the discount rate policies where you influence the rate at which banks borrow from the central bank. The last one before we go is the third one, which is the reserve requirement policies. For the purpose of prudence, commercial banks always have to keep a small fraction of all deposits as cash or its equivalent to pay depositors when they desire to withdraw. Okay, so if I deposit 100 Ghana cedis at a bank, the bank cannot loan out all my 100 Ghana cedis. Okay. They have to keep some reserves. Part of these reserves are required by regulators. So the required reserve, and we call that the required reserve ratio. The required reserve ratio is the fraction of deposits required by banks to keep as reserve. So let's say 20%, or let's say 10%. I mean, if it's 10%, if I deposit 100 Ghana cedis, the bank can only loan out 90. cedis and not all the 100. 10 Ghana has to be kept as reserves, and this is the required reserves. However, banks will usually go beyond the required reserve and keep additional excess reserve. Okay. So if you took the total reserves at the bank level or in the banking sector in general, you have the total reserves. Okay, TR. Then you can have the required reserve. I don't know. Required reserves, which is required by central bank, say 10% or 11%. And then the banks, they are free. They can decide also to keep an excess reserve for themselves in case. Okay, so some say a bank does an extra 5% excess reserve. Okay. We will go into the market for reserves later. So this is the total reserves in the economy. The central bank doesn't have control over the excess reserve that people are keeping, but then the required reserve ratio, which is 10%, the central bank can say that from now onwards, banks should keep 20%, which means that they are increasing the required reserve ratio. Or banks should now even just keep 5%, which means that they are reducing the required reserve ratio. If you reduce the required reserve ratio to 5%, meaning that if I bring 100 Ghana cedis, you can now loan out 95. And that will mean that you expand the money supply. Okay. So if any of these policies can increase money supply or reduce money supply, banks may, in addition to the required reserves, keep additional reserve. An increase in the required reserve ratio from 10% to 20% signals a tightening of monetary policy, contractionary. The opposite is true. A decrease in the required reserve ratio will signal loosening of monetary policy. Any question? Okay, class rep, if you don't have the slides already, please contact the TA for the slides, and please, people, the semester is relatively short, so try and go over the material. Don't wait till it piles up. Okay, Emmanuel.
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, please. I would like to know the relationship between the inflation rate and then the interest rate. In taking decisions regarding, let's say, investments. So maybe if you're going to buy an investment whose rates of return is, let's say, lower than the current inflation rate, whether that type of investment wouldn't be a good investment to go for.
I mean, it will be a dream if you can get an investment like that in Ghana, right? So if inflation is 20%, and you are going to invest in something that will give you an interest rate of 5%. I mean, even if you get a 5% back, you are losing 15% on the inflation side, right? So, I mean, not a dream. It would be terrible, if that is your question, to get a lower rate than the inflation rate. And that is the problem people are facing now in the economy, that even the treasury bill rate they are getting will not cover the inflation pressures in the economy. So then what is the point of putting that money? Maybe then they use it to do whatever they want to do now, because even if they give them a T-bill rate of 16% or 18%, the inflation is more than 20%. So you're losing value. So, I mean, if you are getting a lower rate on your investment than the inflation, you should know that you are losing a lot of money in the economy. Yeah. If you are getting a higher rate than the inflation rate, you are making profits. So banks will not do that. Banks will charge you an interest. If inflation is 20%, banks will not charge you 20%. They are likely to charge you more than 20%. Okay. And that is why the interest rates are so high. the nominal interest rates are so high in the economy. In high inflation settings, interest rates are very high. So, Emmanuel, are you there?
Yes, please, I'm here.
So before you leave, just say, let's say you and we are friends, and you come to me that you need a loan of 1,000 Ghana cedis. The least I will charge you, because we are friends, will be the inflation rate, right? Because
About
then
27%.
27%. So if you bring me back the money in a year's time, it should be enough to cover. It should have the same value, and having the same value means that it should be able to at least deal with inflation, even without profit. If I want a 3% profit on it, then I should charge you 30%. So 27% goes to inflation, and then 3% becomes my profit. Okay. I explained this to my cousin who was borrowing from me, and he said there was something wrong with me. That is the best you can do. In high inflation environments, interest rates can be super, super high. All right, people, we'll end it here. I'll see you guys next week. There's a hand, a question. Lena, oh, Francine. Okay. Send, talk to Francine, talk to my, what do you call it? My TA. Okay. All right, enjoy your week. See you next week. Bye-bye.